In this video, I'm going to be reacting to my Premier League predictions I did at the start of the season. I did the Championship version of this very recently as well. That was an absolute embarrassment, and I don't expect this to be any better, quite frankly. So please hit the like button, subscribe to Rads if you're new, to try and cure my suffering, and let's get into it, shall we? Who knows, next season I might be doing this video, and Nottingham Forest are in it. I'll still make Championship content next season regardless of what division we're in, but imagine doing Premier League content that includes Nottingham Forest. That would just be crazy. Anyway, 20th place, I said Watford. Probably quite a popular call, really. They sack every manager that they hire, no matter how good he does. You know, he could probably win promotion, and they'll sack him within about 8 games, just like Cisco. Don't know why they got rid of him, just to appoint Claudio Ranieri. I actually had to think then who they appointed. Bloody hell. In other words, they got another old manager, even older, in Roy Hodgson. What did they think he was actually going to do? He retired last season, and he thought, you know what, Watford, they're going to sack me. I'll get a massive payoff. Yeah, alright then, we'll deal with it for a few months. 19th, I said Brentford. Now, based off positions, that's awful, because they finished 13th. However, they were newly promoted, so I don't think that's really too embarrassing to have put them there. You know, you could easily see a playoff winner getting relegated, but no, they didn't even really look close to doing it. They had a good start to the season. They started it by beating Arsenal, of course, and ultimately, around about the halfway stage, they started to look like they were slowly being found out. It looked like they were being dragged into the relegation battle, but Mr. Christian Eriksen, it's an absolute miracle that he's still alive, quite frankly, but the fact that he's even on the pitch is phenomenal. He's already playing at the top level. I'd love to see him stay at Brentford, and I think he will, but at the same time, if he was to go back to Spurs, for instance, I think he'd more than deserve it, and he would certainly fit in. Brentford were definitely carried by him, but Brentford as a whole had a pretty strong end to the season. In 18th, at the time, this would have been more than excusable, but now it's really, really bad. Newcastle. They became the richest club in the world, so it's not really a surprise that they stayed up comfortably in the end. However, they didn't even spend that much in January. So this is down to Eddie Howe getting, you know, a tune out of these players, making someone like Joelinton actually good. They didn't even go out and sign like £200 million worth of talent. They got the likes of Dan Burn, Chris Wood from a relegation rival in Burnley. Then obviously they got Bruno from Leon, which they did spend a fair amount of money on him. Kieran Trippier as well. It's smart signings. Ultimately, even without money, I think they've done a really good job in the second half of this season. 17th, this quite frankly is one of my worst takes I think I've ever made, really. And, you know, I want people to subscribe to this channel. I don't just want you to subscribe for numbers. I'd like you to subscribe because you enjoy the channel and you think, yeah, you know what? This lad knows his stuff. When I'm putting Norwich 17th, I don't really think that's inspiring anyone, really. But you should definitely still subscribe, 100%. Just ignore that I've put Norwich 17th when they get relegated every single year. Never spend any money whatsoever. Play absolutely dreadful football. Rely on Ben Gibson and Grant Hanley at the back. They play Kenny McLean. They think Billy Gilmore is good enough in that midfield. They only have Timo Pukki up front that's actually got any quality. But I thought that they would survive. Didn't spend any money in January. That was basically just a confirmation with half a season left. Yep, we're going to go down and we're not even going to really try and survive. 16th place, I put Southampton. Business as usual, really. Just there. James Ward-Prowse scores absolute worldies from time to time, but other than that, this happens every year with Southampton though. The final like 12 games, they just put the feet up because they know they're safe. Come on, like they've got to change something, Southampton. They've got no owners, which is good, but ultimately another quite average season. Burnley, I do feel sorry for Burnley. I would have liked to have seen them survive, but if you're going to get rid of Sean Dyche, that's pretty much asking for trouble. And you know, when Mike Jackson came in, he was always going to be in a really bad situation to try and keep that team in the Premier League with hardly any funds. It was always going to catch up on them, years worth of not spending money. And when he came in, it looked like it was going to be quite a thrilling end to the season, but ultimately just did not have enough to beat it. Yep, I actually just made a string of Michael Jackson jokes in one go. I'm pretty proud of that, to be fair. You can easily see someone like Weghorst. I'm amazed even joined Burnley in the first place. Maxwell Cornet, you know, players like that leaving Burnley, and James Tarkowski, Nick Pope, players like that, because they're fantastic players. 14th, Brighton, they came 9th. Amazing year for them, really. They had quite a poor run, really, for like 3 months in the middle of the season where they hardly won a game, especially at home. But they still stayed in the top 10, and it took them quite a while to drop out, and ultimately that went away at Arsenal about a month or 2 ago, not even that. That did kickstart quite a nice end to the season for Brighton. Got that win against Man United, but then again, it is Man United, it's not that difficult. And they also got that win against West Ham on the last day as well. So they had a good end to the season, Brighton, and they should be incredibly happy with 9th place. 13th, their rivals, Crystal Palace. I do think 12th, which is where they actually came, it does look a little bit false, because ultimately Palace had a very good season. FA Cup semi-finalist, Patrick Vieira got them playing some really good football. And ultimately, ultimately 12th is still mid-table, quite a mediocre position. You sense a direction at Palace that they want to try and push on for top 10, maybe even like a Conference League spot or a Europa League spot even in the future. And I do think it's doable if they can keep up the progress of this season. They're going to lose Conor Gallagher, but they've got the likes of Gueye in there, who's been a brilliant signing. Tyreek Mitchell, they both played for England as well, Mitchell came from the Palace Youth Academy as well, and that's really good to see. You had 3 Palace players in the England team. Michael Elise, absolute steal of a signing from Reading. Just a few more signings here and there. I think they should have a good year again next season. 12th, Wolves. They actually came 10th. A disappointing year, ultimately. I don't really see Bruno Lage staying there. I'm seeing a lot of rumours that he might be sacked, because ultimately Wolves should have been trying to get Europa League again. And, really, they're only in the Championship like 4 or 5 years ago, but their expectations have risen exceptionally. 2 back-to-back 7th places, a 13th place finish last season, 10th this season, and they only dropped down the last day of the season. They were 8th to 6th all season. To drop down to 10th is such a disappointment. 11th, this is pretty awful, but this club should never have been as low as they were in the first place. Everton. They pitch invaded for finishing 16th. Everton. Okay, yeah, you're pleased you survived. I completely get that. But you're Everton. You shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. And okay, you know what? Fair enough. But you pitch invaded before the game had even finished. All these pitch invasions recently have been really idiotic, but that one is the worst. The game hadn't even finished, mate, and you're pitch invading. Imagine if Palace had scored. That would have been so funny. Ultimately, the likes of Richarlison, Pickford, Gordon, Calvert-Lewin for the final few games of the season, they really did carry them over the line. But the likes of, Keane, Holgate, I suppose, Coleman, basically their defence is what's cost them heavily. 10th, I said West Ham, they came 7th. Ultimately a little bit disappointing when they were pushing for top 4 for a fair amount of the season. Looked like they were going to get Europa League, and they got the semi-finals of the Europa League, and I was really urging them on to win that tournament because I thought they had it in them. And to ultimately lose to 11th place in the Bundesliga, I think was quite a disappointment. And the fact that Rangers lost to them as well, that's mental that Frankfurt did that. It is a bit disappointing given the fact that they got to the semi-finals of the Europa League, but they're not even going to be in it next season. They're going to be in the Conference League instead. And, that's disappointing, but ultimately 2 years of European qualification for West Ham is an incredible achievement. And they've got some players in there that they do need to move on. They do need a striker because they have not got an out-and-out striker still. But I love some of their players. Like, Bowen. What an absolute baller. He needs to go to the World Cup. He's currently underrated. Declan Rice, I know everyone will talk about him, but I just think he's brilliant. He's like the Ryan Yates of West Ham, in my opinion. He just does the business quietly. Scores a few goals as well, and he's just a top lad, just like Ryan Yates is. So, yeah, fair play to West Ham. They've got some good players in there. Let's just not talk about Kurt Zouma, though. 9th place, this ended up being really quite a dreadful take. Leeds, they came 17th. That was a really bad take, wasn't it? How many places did that out? Like 7 places. I thought it was a huge call to get rid of Bielsa, but ultimately it was needed because they were going nowhere. They didn't have a plan B. Under Bielsa, they were conceding goals way too easily. Under Jesse March, I don't know. I know a Leeds fan who actually lives next door to me, and I was talking to him about Jesse Marsch, and he hasn't got the biggest opinion of him. He's not really sure about him, but I think at the very least he has kept Leeds up ultimately, and that was looking like a real tall order with all the injuries they've got. They've had Phillips out a lot of the season, they've had Bamford out. You know, they've had so many players out injured at times, and ultimately they've managed to pull through. But they need to get recruitment right, and they need to have a bit of a rebuild in the summer if they want to stay up again next season. 8th, another poor call, Spurs. They actually came 4th. I'm actually really pleased Spurs got top 4, because out of all the so-called Big 6 teams, they're probably the ones that I don't mind the least. I don't particularly like Spurs, because I don't like any of the Big 6, but they're the ones that I dislike the least, should we just say that. Since the Champions League final defeat in 2019, they've had a bit of a drop-off, but Conte is getting them back on that track. Getting back into the Champions League is a huge achievement. I know it's yet another trophy this season for Spurs. The League Cup semi-finals being knocked out by Borough in the FA Cup was hugely disappointing. But ultimately, I think Spurs have ended the season really, really well, and they should be very happy with that. 7th place, Aston Villa. They came 14th. That's awful, isn't it? I said they'll do well because of their business. They signed Wendy, Bailey, Ings. I thought signing 3 players to replace Grealish was a really, really smart move. But it just didn't work out. Bailey's injury prone, Buendia was way too inconsistent, and Ings was a bench player at times. So that just did not work, and really, it's hard to pinpoint like any positives from this season for Villa. They've had some good results, but I look at that team. For me, their standout player this season would probably be Jacob Ramsey. I'm gonna say this as an ex-Forest player. Matty Cash has been amazing again. Arsenal, I said 6th place. They actually came 5th. Ultimately, their goal this season would have been to get back into Europe, and they did that. And I do think not being in Europe this season really did help them out a lot. Apart from the FA Cup, which I'm struggling to think, how did they get knocked out of the FA Cup again? They've got a really good young core group of players in this team. Ramsdale, Saka, Smith Rowe, Odegaard. I do think the future's pretty bright for Arsenal, and I don't really see them getting back to an invincible level anytime soon, but they could at the very least stop being a bit of a joke club and compete for titles and actually win titles. 5th, this is dreadful. I said Leicester. Now, ultimately, they came 8th, which is a lot higher than where they've been most of the season. They were like 9th to 10th, even 14th. Only about 2 weeks ago, they were 14th. They had a strong end to the season. They beat Norwich and Watford, which is not hard, but then they draw with Chelsea, and then they smashed Southampton. So, okay, they've had easier teams to play, but they've had a strong end to the season, and they've been looking more competent. I think James Maddison, his season has gone well under the radar. You can easily see the likes of Tielemans leaving, and ultimately they've got to find someone to replace Vardy, because he's probably going to be around next season, but long term he is not. To not be in Europe at all next season would be a bit disappointing, given the fact that they got to the Conference League semi-finals. I was actually at the first leg against Roma, and it was a really, really good atmosphere at the King Power. 4th place, arguably the worst really. I said Manchester United. They came 6th. This video could go on quite a while if I talk about just Man United. What an absolute shambles of a club. It's funny, from top to bottom is a total mess, and Erik ten Hag has an absolute gigantic job on his hands, and I don't see him really improving it. Harry Maguire is a footballer. If he's a footballer, so am I. Ronaldo, ultimately he's 37, yet he still was by a mile their best player. He did his job. Ronaldo did what he could do. He was just surrounded by mediocre players. That team needs gutting. And I hate to say it, but if Man United don't use Jimmy Garner, they're absolute idiots. He is more than good enough for that midfield. If Bruno, who's not even been that good this season, and particularly McTominay and Matic and Fred and Pogba, if they're good enough to play for Man United, then so is James Garner. However, given how thick and stupid Man United are, they might not even play him. And I hope they don't, sincerely. If we get promoted, I think we've got a huge opportunity to keep James Garner. 3rd, Liverpool. I don't really know why I said they'd be 3rd, to be honest. I think I was kind of basing it off the injuries they had last year, but they've been amazing this season. And, you know, for a second year out of 4, they've got 90 plus points and missed out on the title to City. An unbelievable title race. Okay, they're not going to do the quadruple, but they won the first FA Cup since 2006. They actually took it seriously and they won it. They could win a 7th Champions League, a 2nd Champions League in 4 seasons, you know. So yet again, miss out on the Premier League, but they win the Champions League. I don't really think that's a bad season at all. They could win 3 of the 4 trophies available. Like, you can't complain. Chelsea, very strange season. 2nd place. I said they'd be 3rd. I swear Chelsea were 3rd the entire season. I don't even remember them dropping out of 3rd place. They weren't even that good at Stamford Bridge. Away from home they were pretty good, but at Stamford Bridge they drew so many games to teams that they should have been beating. I rate Thomas Tuchel highly. They've got a great team, but what they need, and it's mental that I'm saying this when Lukaku and Werner are their strikers, they need a striker because both of those are too inconsistent. 1st place, Man City. Obvious, isn't it? Ridiculously good. It's easy to predict they're going to be 1st. Kevin De Bruyne is not human. And yeah, just to add insult to injury, they're going to be signing Erling Haaland. It's just unfair, isn't it? It's just unfair. Yet again, they failed in the Champions League in ridiculous circumstances, but they won the Premier League again. They won the Premier League. Like, are we shocked? No. So that was my reaction to my Premier League predictions. Some pretty awful takes in there. I know. Norwich probably being the worst. How bad were yours? Let me know in the comments below. Did you have any absolute howlers like me? You definitely did. What do you think of my predictions? And I will probably ask this again after the playoff final. But if Forest are promoted, I feel it's only fair I do the Premier League content a little bit more often because I love talking about the top flight. It is the division that I watch the most because ultimately it's the best division. If Forest are in it, it would be the perfect excuse to do Premier League content more. Just let me know in the comments below. Would it make sense? Would you personally watch Premier League content if I did it next season? If we're in the Premier League. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, everyone. Look forward to any content going forward. We've got a big week on the channel. This video, obviously, I've got at least one video coming up in preparation for the playoffs. Hopefully another one as well. Thanks for watching, everyone. I will see you very soon for another video.